The things that I want to talk a little bit about today is some of what we've seen work in the space of software engineering intelligence, specifically in the larger enterprise space. So you're going to hear me say some acronyms. Let's just get that out on the table first. So if I use the term SEI, I'm referring to software engineering intelligence. And that is the name that Gartner has given the industry of providers that focus on surfacing insights into the software development lifecycle. So you can think of things like your pull request cycle time or your Jira issue cycle time, things around your pull request activity, commit activity, those sorts of things. Dora falls into this category as being one of the things provided by software engineering intelligence providers. So if you hear me say SEI, that's what I'm talking about. So going to be talking about SEI and then also in scoping it to the enterprise. And by enterprise, what we're referencing are complex organizations with more than 1,000 engineers. And it's important to call that out because these types of organizations have many different team structures. They've got many different ways of working. They're using all sorts of different tools and tool providers. So it is important that I call that out as the scope of what I'm going to be talking about. And I want to focus on the concept of what works. So the world of software engineering intelligence, it's been around for 8 years. We were one of the first, if not the first, to do it at Code Climate. And there's been this kind of evolution or thinking, this migration in the market where it feels like a case of the haves and have-nots. But the organizations who have really responded well to having access to the engineering insight, the organizations that are actually using insights to make improvements seem to have some of these things in common. And the organizations that don't get value out of having the insights available to them, they also have things in common. So for the purpose of this conversation, we just want to focus a little bit on what we've seen work. The first thing with what we've seen work is what I refer to as a product mindset. So in the world of platform engineering, in the world of modern product management, treating things as a product has a specific connotation to it. And there's been a lot of papers, there have been a lot of people talk about this platform as a product type of mindset. And what we see in the enterprise space is organizations who view their engineering intelligence offering as a product tend to have a lot more success. And the reasons for that can really be simplified into 3 primary things. So there's the fact that they are user-centric, the fact that they have frequent and continuous iterations and evolutions, and the fact that they are outcomes oriented. And I want to talk a little bit about each of those 3 things here. So user centricity means that we're not just providing metrics for metrics' sake. We actually have an understanding of who's consuming this information, who's using this information, why they need it, how often they need it, what format they need it in, and we're tailoring the delivery of the insights to what the user needs are. That's a very different approach than to just have a set it and forget it or firing numbers into the ether. It's really important that organizations understand who their users are and what they're trying to achieve. So that's the user centricity. The iteration aspect of it is something that's also really important. Team structures evolve. The initiatives change quarter over quarter. Types of things that companies are doing are not static. So to have a engineering intelligence platform that is static is automatically a mismatch. So being able to have the capability of evolving your platform, having the knowledge that evolving the platform is necessary and is a feature, not a bug, is another big differentiator of organizations that are being successful with this type of approach. So having the capability and the understanding that frequent iteration is important. And then the last bit of this is outcomes orientation. A lot of software engineering sites can be categorized as output centric. We're thinking about how much code was written, how fast, right? We're not talking about the value of what was created. In general, the software engineering insights industry seems to avoid that part. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But if you're running your insights platform as a product, you need to have a strong understanding on what the target outcomes are. By providing this type of information, we seek to unlock blank capability, or we seek to deliver blank result to the business. The best organizations are thinking about that with their offering. The next category that I want to talk about is the end-to-end value stream. So we would say the value of code is not the code. It is a piece of the life cycle, but that's not the end result of what any organization is trying to do. So when we think about the end-to-end value stream, but we're thinking about something goes from idea to happy user. That is the span of events. That's the starting point and the ending point of what it is that actually provide value in the process. So along that journey, you go from idea to happy user. The process of writing code is one thin sliver of that end-to-end value stream. Unfortunately, that tends to be where a lot of engineering organizations or where organizations focus their metrics gathering. A couple reasons for that. First, it's relatively easy to measure output of code, right? We can very easily see what a pull request size looks like, and we can very easily see what our cycle time is as it relates to the code that we're generating. It's a lot harder to tie that work back to a business outcome. It's a lot harder to understand what the overall feedback cycle is from what a customer says, to what requirements were, to what the issues were, to what code was generated. That stuff is harder to tie together, but that's ultimately where the value is. There's little value in only looking at that thin slice. There are a lot of organizations that struggle here, that struggle to get value out of engineering insights. They do so because they're only optimizing for this slice of the end-to-end value stream. So if we were to improve this by 100%, we still have everything over here and everything over here that was untouched or was possibly impacted negatively by some of the optimizations we made during the code writing stage. The organizations that are having the most success in integrating engineering intelligence in their processes are the ones who are thinking about the end-to-end values. The third thing that I want to talk about is leadership involvement or the role of leadership in the insights space. One of the biggest complaints or biggest concerns, valid criticisms of software engineering insights industry is that provides a bunch of metrics that can be used to measure the performance of developers, but they are not necessarily measuring the value that's delivered by developers. So these metrics can be the wrong thing to manage too. I agree with that. The organizations that are being successful leveraging engineering insights, the way that they're looking at them and the way that the leadership looks at them is from a very different perspective. It's not about managing to a number. Leaders are involved in a couple of different ways that are consistent in the ones that we've seen be successful. So the first thing that we see out of this is that the leadership, they are asking big questions. they're not focusing on how can we improve cycle time by 10%. They're focusing on the more existential questions, like how to make sure that the engineering team we're acquiring is going to continue to perform as well as they have been. What are the things that we need to do to make sure that they're going to have an effective integration? Or if we're evaluating multiple different third-party vendors, how can we make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck out of who we choose to go with? So leadership is using the same type of information, but they're thinking about it in more strategic and business operations kind of way. Second thing that we see from leadership involvement is the experimental mindset. And what that does is it gives the organization the ability to take some bets. If the leadership is able to look at the data and understand that it's not going to change on its own, we need to make some changes, and I'm going to provide a safe space for you to experiment with changes in order to make meaningful improvements, that drastically changes how the rest of the organization behaves. When there is air cover to experiment and be wrong, when there is air cover to try something that's never been tried in the organization before, those are the organizations that tend to get the quicker wins, that tend to get the more impactful wins in the changes that they're doing. And all of that has to be set by the leadership. There has to be that culture of expectation, of experimentation established from the top, so that the teams and individuals that are actually closest to the activity feel like they've got a safe space in order to experiment some things that they may not have done otherwise. A lot of the organizations that we work with that make meaningful changes, things like how to structure their teams, or things like which type of development process a team chooses to work with, those types of changes, when the teams feel like they have the ability to make those decisions and be supported, makes a really big difference on their ability to be successful. And then the other aspect of leadership involvement is what I would refer to as the bottoms up approach. The organizations, the people that work there, they know what the problems are. One of the things that we see work very successfully in these organizations is combining some of the qualitative things through like developer experience surveys or retrospectives with what the quantitative data says. All of that feedback that comes from the developers themselves is internalized and worked with at the higher levels of the organization. And where things break down in the less successful organizations are the ones where the developers are able to communicate challenges. They're able to point out opportunities for improvement, but then nothing happens. Compare that to our more successful customers, and we see that contribution, those comments, that feedback from the developers is taken seriously. And combine that with the experimental mindset of the leader, that feedback is taken seriously, and those teams and individuals are given the opportunity to do something about that feedback. One of the most challenging things that I run into over and over again with some organizations is the feelings of being stuck, where a team knows something that they could change to make an improvement, but they don't bring it up to anybody. They don't have the ability to make that change themselves. And that ends up resulting in kind of this stagnant organization that doesn't communicate and just stalls out. Compare that with the more successful customers we have, that the teams feel like there's value in sharing their observation because they know that they're going to be taken seriously. They know they're going to have the ability to try something to make an improvement there. So these are just three of the things we've seen as consistent traits of the more successful, larger enterprises that we work in. There are others, but these are the three that I wanted to talk to you today. I'm hoping to do more of these types of discussions in the future, but curious to know what you've done.